Why did so many African marriages begin to fracture after crossing into the diaspora? Why do couples who celebrated with joy, prayer, family blessings, and cultural pride suddenly find themselves trapped in silence, police reports, courtrooms, emotional distance, and broken homes? The answer is not as simple as men against women or tradition against modernity. The real crisis is that many African couples migrate with ceremonies but without preparation. They carry the wedding across the ocean but leave behind the structures that once protected the marriage. They enter societies built on individualism while still thinking communally. Yet, they are never taught how to balance both worlds without destroying their own. In Africa, marriage is not just about two people in love. It is a social institution surrounded by elders, family accountability, cultural expectations, spiritual obligation, and communal correction. But in the diaspora, many couples suddenly find themselves alone. No elders, no community intervention, only pressure, isolation, financial stress, legal systems, social media influence, and new ideas of freedom they were never prepared to manage. This is where the fractures begin. Some begin to confuse freedom with rebellion. Some confuse leadership with control. Some mistake equality for competition. Others allow outsiders, materialism, immigration pressures, and bad counsel to redefine their marriage. What should have been a partnership slowly becomes a battlefield. This episode is not an attack on women. It's not a defense of abuse. It is not a romanticizing of African culture. It is a confrontation with a hard question. How can African marriages survive in foreign lands without losing the values that once held them together? Because if we fail to answer that question honestly, then many more homes will continue to collapse quietly across the diaspora, while the wedding photos remain the only evidence that love ever lived there.
Strength of Africa TV presents
Wife in Africa, Boss Abroad.
African Marriage, Freedom and Fracture in the Diaspora.
Across the oceans, the river still remembers home. Two hearts left the village, now they struggle all alone. Wedding songs turn silence in the cold foreign night. Love became a battlefield where pride replaced the light. Elders' voices faded, now the law stands at the door. Promises once sacred feel unfamiliar anymore. Still the roots keep calling through the storms and sacrifice. A home is built by wisdom, not by comfort or by rights. May the river cross the ocean without losing where it starts. May our home survive the distance. May love outlive the scars. Not freedom without wisdom, not power without grace. A family without balance can lose its sacred place. Hold the roots, hold the promise, let the children see the way, so African hearts in diaspora will not slowly drift away. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Depending on where you are at this moment, I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV, where truth meets courage, where the past is reawakened and the future of the motherland is reclaimed. Today's episode is titled Wife in Africa, Boss Abroad, African Marriage, Freedom, and Fracture in the Diaspora. Let's begin with marriage as the bedrock of African life. In traditional Africa, marriage is the foundation stone of society. It is the gateway into full adulthood and social legitimacy. No matter a man's wealth or education, he is considered incomplete without a home. No matter a woman's beauty or skill, she is regarded as unsettled without a union that roots her in community. Marriage is supported by rituals that remind the couple they are never alone. The libations, the prayers, the counsel of elders, and the symbolism of bride price all serve one purpose: to announce that this union is bigger than emotion. It is a duty, it is a trust. It is a responsibility that must outlive momentary desire. In this system, failure is not private. When a marriage collapses, it is felt in the family compound, in the clan's name, and in the social fabric. Children do not belong only to parents. They belong to the people. This is why marriage is guarded with severe seriousness. African marriage trains discipline before romance, character before comfort, and duty before desire. It is designed to outlast seasons, not merely to satisfy feelings. This philosophy is what many couples fail to transport with them abroad. In the village worldview, marriage is the mortar between bricks. Remove it, and even the strongest walls begin to wobble. It teaches patience the way farming teaches patience, by forcing one to respect seasons, weather, and forces beyond control. Love is expected to grow, but only after discipline has prepared the soil. African philosophy understands that desire is a visitor, not a resident. That is why elders intervene early, not to control love, but to protect it from immaturity. The modern mistake is assuming that supervision limits freedom, when in truth, it preserves continuity. Why are Africans returning home to fetch a spouse? For many Africans in the diaspora, going back to marry is a statement of identity. It is a rejection of complete assimilation and a declaration that their roots still matter. They seek spouses who understand respect, family, and endurance. They believe that a partner from whom will automatically preserve African values abroad. The weddings are grand, the village gathers, the city stops, money flows, outfits shine. Promises are made with confidence and pride. But too often, the questions that should be asked are drowned out by music. No one asks, can this marriage survive cultural shock? Can this union endure isolation? Can these two negotiate power in a land without elders? Many couples confuse cultural similarity with marital readiness. Shared language does not guarantee shared expectations. A spouse raised in Africa may never have been prepared for the realities of diaspora life. What is brought back abroad is often a spouse, but what is left behind is the support system that made the marriage viable. This gap becomes the first invisible crack in the foundation. Returning home to marry is often driven by nostalgia, a longing for familiarity in a world that constantly reminds one of difference. It's an attempt to anchor identity through union, to say, I may live elsewhere, but my heart still knows its language. Yet, nostalgia can blur realism, turning memory into myth. Home prepares people for community life, not isolation. The spouse brought abroad may have learned endurance through proximity, not solitude. When that village-trained patient meets diaspora loneliness, it can either deepen character or break spirit, depending on preparation. Let's look at the shock of arrival in foreign lands. Arrival in the diaspora is a collision of worlds. The African communal safety net disappears overnight. Neighbors no longer interfere. Family is a phone call away. Elders are silent voices across time zones. In their place stand laws, policies, and institutions that do not know your history. The couple is left alone to reinvent marriage under pressure. Work demands increase, financial stress mounts, identity crisis emerge. What was once a shared struggle becomes a contest of sacrifice. Without preparation, love becomes a casualty. Many spouses experience a silent shock. The rhythm of life is fast, cold, and unforgiving. There is little room for emotional adjustment. Everything is timed, scheduled, and contractual. In this environment, small misunderstandings quickly turn into major conflicts. There is no pause button, no family intervention, no breathing space. The marriage is forced to perform under extreme conditions. Migration is not just movement of bodies, it is movement of meaning. Roles that were clear at home become negotiable overnight. Silence replaces supervision, and many couples confuse this silence with peace only to later discover it was abandonment. The African proverb warns that a child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. In the diaspora, many marriages burn not out of malice, but out of emotional cold. Now, let's look at freedom, rights, and the misunderstanding of equality. One of the deepest fault lines in diaspora marriages is the misrepresentation of freedom. In many host countries, freedom is individualistic, legalistic, and assertive. Without cultural context, this freedom is seen as license to dismantle tradition rather than reform it. Equality, instead of being a balance of value, becomes a power struggle. Some wives view submission as slavery. Some husbands view companionship as subordination. Neither side fully understands that African marriage thrives on complementary, not competition. The sudden access to legal protection, social welfare, and state backing changes the power dynamics in the home. When not managed with wisdom, this shift breeds contempt and defiance. Freedom without cultural maturity becomes a weapon. Rights without responsibility turn into entitlement. What should have empowered the home begins to destroy it from within. African wisdom teaches that two hands wash each other. Equality was never sameness, but mutual dependence. The tragedy of unexamined modern freedom is that it turns partnership into negotiation and love into leverage. When freedom arrives before self-mastery, it intoxicates. People mistake the removal of external restraint for internal maturity. Yet, a society that frees the body without training the character creates homes that are legally safe but emotionally unsafe. Let's have a look at the influence of company and counsel. Africa warns us that a person is shaped by the company they keep. Show me your friend and I will tell the kind of person you are. In the diaspora, loneliness drives people into quick alliances. Some newly married women are surrounded by voices that celebrate broken homes as badges of courage. These voices rewrite patience as foolishness and endurance as oppression. Advice is given without context, without accountability, without love for the home it destroys. Soon, the wife returns home speaking a language that marriage does not understand. Bad counsel is sweet to the ear but bitter to the soul. It arrives wrapped in sympathy but leads to irreversible consequences. Many marriages die not from abuse but from poisoned advice. In Africa, counsel is given by those who will also share the shame if the marriage fails. In the diaspora, advice is given by those with nothing to lose. In traditional settings, advice was slow, heavy, and costly. Words carried consequences because the speaker stood within the blast radius of failure. In contrast, diaspora counsel is fast, loud, and disposable. African philosophy warns that not every voice is a drumbeat meant for your dance. Some rhythms are designed to scatter, not to gather. Wisdom lies in knowing which song your marriage must follow. What happens when the law enters the living room? Without community mediation, small disagreements escalate rapidly. The police replace uncles. Courts replace family meetings. Men who never raised a hand find themselves handcuffed. Women who sought protection find themselves isolated. The law does not heal relationships, it only enforces consequences. By the time it arrives, the marriage is already bleeding. Once the state enters the home, trust collapses, fear replaces dialogue. Every argument carries the threat of legal escalation. Children become collateral damage. Growing up between systems that do not understand their cultural identity. The law speaks the language of evidence, not emotion. It cannot hear ancestral context or cultural undercurrents. Once invited, it flattens complex relationships into fights and procedures. However, within many African diaspora communities, there is growing concern that these systems have also created opportunities for manipulation, false accusations, and immigration leverage. Some men claim they are threatened during ordinary marital disagreements with statements such as, "I will call the police," "I will report you," or "you will lose everything." What began as a marriage becomes a legal chess game where fear replaces communication. In some cases, a man who spent years working multiple jobs to bring his wife abroad finds himself removed from his own home through restraining orders, investigations, or social service interventions before extended fact-finding even occurs. Whether the allegations are true, exaggerated, or false, the emotional damage is often irreversible. Trust dies quickly when the state becomes a third party in the marriage. African women entering the diaspora must understand that freedom is not licensed for cruelty, revenge, or immigration warfare. True empowerment builds homes. It does not delight in destroying them. A woman who uses the law as a tool of terror against an innocent spouse may win temporary control, but leaves behind a generation of traumatized children and broken trust. African systems sought restoration before punishment. The diaspora often reverses this order, treating wounds with force instead of wisdom. Even marriages formed entirely abroad are not immune. Shared nationality does not guarantee shared values. Without intentional cultural grounding, these unions float without anchor. The issue is not where the marriage was consummated, but whether it was prepared. Many Africans abroad marry under pressure, age, immigration status, or social expectation. These pressures create fragile foundations. When identity is confused, marriage becomes an experiment rather than a commitment. Marriage without cultural grounding is like a canoe without a paddle. Love may float, but it cannot steer. Time and pressure will eventually decide its direction. Identity confusion creates marriages that are reactive rather than intentional, built on avoidance instead of vision. My fellow Africans, where did we fail? We failed in premarital education. We failed to teach couples how to translate African values into foreign systems. We failed to warn them that freedom without structure is destructive. We celebrated weddings but neglected marriage sustenance. We applauded ceremonies and ignored character. In recent years, the United Kingdom has become a powerful intersection where traditional African marriage values centered on sacrifice, endurance, and family duty often clash with a Western legal framework focused on individual rights, state protection, and domestic abuse intervention. Through systems such as the Violence Domestic Abuse Provisions and the Migrant Victims of Domestic Abuse Concessions, MVDAC, individuals who report domestic abuse can receive temporary immigration protection, access to public support, housing assistance, and even a route to permanent residency, independent of their sponsoring spouse. While these protections were designed to safeguard genuine victims of physical, emotional, financial, and psychological abuse, and have undoubtedly rescued many people from dangerous situations. There is growing concern within sections of the African diaspora that the system is being exploited through false allegations, emotional manipulation, or immigration-related leverage during marital disputes. As a result, some men who invested years of sacrifice to relocate their families abroad have found themselves suddenly facing police action, restraining orders, or social service investigations before full facts are established, leading to broken trust, emotional trauma, and the destabilization of entire households. The greatest tragedy of many diaspora marriages is that people cross oceans without crossing into maturity. Some arrive in the West with African ceremonies but without African discipline. Others embrace Western rights without Western responsibility. The result is a home where the man feels criminalized, the woman feels unheard, the children feel confused, and the state profits from the collapse of the family units. Africa must learn that modernity without morality is chaos. And the West must also learn that laws without cultural understanding can turn homes into legal war zones. If the African family is to survive the diaspora era, then both men and women must reject extremes. There must be justice without hatred, freedom without rebellion, authority without tyranny, and love without manipulation. Otherwise, many more homes will cross oceans only to drown in silence. Balance is an African inheritance. It teaches firmness without cruelty and gentleness without weakness. Reorientation begins when couples see marriage as a stewardship, not entitlement. Communities must become bridges again, translating old wisdom into new realities rather than abandoning it altogether. When a tree is uprooted and planted in new soil, it must be staked until its roots take hold. African marriages in the diaspora require stakes of wisdom, patience, and mutual respect. This is not a battle of genders. It is a struggle for memory, identity, and survival. If we do not adapt our values without abandoning them, we will continue to lose homes to ignorance and pride. The journey across oceans tests not just endurance, but memory. What survives is what was deeply rooted, not what was loudly celebrated. May our marriages become vessels strong enough to carry heritage across storms, and wise enough to adapt without forgetting who they are. May the river cross the ocean without forgetting its source. May our homes survive the journey, and may our children inherit stability, not scars. I'm your host, Adebayo Oladokun, and this is Strength of Africa TV. If you found value in this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Endeavor to join our membership and give super thanks. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Rumble. For advert placement, visit us online at Strength of Africa TV. Watch out for the next episode. You don't want to miss it. Until then, tell your own story, because Africa's future is written in African ink. Stay rooted, stay bold, stay African. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next episode. Bye.
Across the oceans, the river still remembers home. Two hearts left the village, now they struggle all alone. Wedding songs turn silence in the cold foreign night. Love became a battlefield where pride replaced the light. Elders' voices faded, now the lost stands at the door. Promises once sacred feel unfamiliar anymore. Still the roots keep calling through the storms and sacrifice. A home is built by wisdom, not by comfort or by rights. May the river cross the ocean without losing where it starts. May our home survive the resistance. May love outlive the scars. Not freedom without wisdom, not power without grace. A family without balance can lose its sacred place. Hold the roots, hold the promise, let the children see the way, so African hearts in diaspora will not slowly drift away.